Welcome to our Bright Talk today with NS1 and Global Dots with Danielle Russell and Francesco Altamara. My name is Torsten Deutrich. I'm going to be your host. What's going to be the topic today? The topic is stay out of outages, the BCP element no one talks about. And I'm really looking forward to this talk. We're going to have a little agenda, which actually is very wide. Let's see, and we'll just do a fireside chat today and talk about different topics. So first of all, I would like to introduce our panelists. First comes Danielle. Danielle is the Director of Product Marketing at NS1. She has an extensive experience in telecommunications, enterprise networking, and cybersecurity. She has spent the past decade in growth stage startups. Prior to joining NS1, Danielle led product marketing at AT&T's cybersecurity division. She also has a bachelor in science journalism from the lovely University of Wisconsin. Welcome, Danielle. From Global Dots side, we have Francesco Altamara. Francesco is our senior solution architect at Global Dots. He's a certified solution architect on multiple hyperscalers, AWS, Azure, GCP, AliCloud, and probably some else, which he doesn't disclose. He's also certified by CompTIA as an A+ network and Security Plus professional, as well as CCNA. On top of it, he used to work for Akamai, so he's an Akamai cloud service veteran, and he used to work for IBM. Francesco is not only Global Dots chief web performance expert in Europe, but he also drives sales for Global Dots in Southern Europe. And last but not least, he's our DNS champion. So welcome, Francesco.
Thank you.
Danielle, would you please introduce NS1 to our audience?
Yeah, thanks, Thorsten. I'm so excited to be here today for this conversation. A little bit about NS1. Our mission, quite simply, is to connect the world's applications to audiences. We work with some of the most innovative and trusted brands around the world to help them build and deploy application experiences that are really changing the way that we all work, that we play, that we stream videos online, and the way that we shop and more. We do this by delivering modern DNS solutions, application traffic steering, and enterprise DDI solutions. And those are all delivered through our unified cloud-based platform, NS1 Connect, which enables our customers to drive more automation and modernization, ensure business reliability and security, as we're going to talk about today, and most importantly, ensure really highly performant and exceptional application experiences for every single user.
Thanks a lot. And Francesco, as we partner with NS1 now, please do a short introduction for Global Dots.
Very happily, Thorsten. Hi, everyone. Global Dots is a system integrator, and it's been around for over 17 years. I've had the luck of being with Global Dots for over 8 years, therefore see at least half of its journey. We specialize in 4 main pillars of operations. The first one has to do with our roots. It's web performance and acceleration. Strictly speaking, we're looking at services for port 80, 443, and 53, which is the reason why we're here today. This is really, truly our bread and butter. The second pillar of our operation is security. Security at all levels of the OSI model. There are, of course, many evergreen products that we position, but also lots of niche or very avant-garde fronts of security where we pioneer and specialize to consult with our customers. The remaining 2 pillars of our expertise have all to do with clouds, public and private on the one hand, and infrastructure, on-prem operations on the other hand. Because we're a neutral party, we love to consult our customers. We see many and many more customers becoming hybrid these days. We welcome that, and that is why we have a holistic approach to their infrastructure.
So let's just jump right into that. Yeah. We've seen quite a bit of stuff going on in the internet and in outages these days. But let's, before we talk about that, I would love to start with a question is, what does business continuity from a practical perspective look like, Danielle? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a really great question to kick off our conversation today, Thorsten. So we're talking about business continuity planning, and I know that there are folks who really live and breathe this stuff every day. So I won't try to insult them by trying to distill an entire discipline into a sentence. But as you said, practically speaking, I think of application delivery and networking and even security operations teams. They fundamentally know that outages happen, right? And this is true whether you're talking about your own data center infrastructure or private cloud, your public cloud service provider or CDN provider, or even your internet service provider. Really, Murphy's Law is at play across today's highly dynamic and highly distributed application delivery environments. And in this environment, outages and service disruptions and performance degradation, they're really commonplace, and yet they're totally unpredictable. It can be from server failures or code misconfigurations or DDoS attacks, power outages, or other forces majeure. Every dog has its day. And we've been reminded of this by an onslaught of recent outages at major infrastructure providers. So for the teams who are really responsible for deploying and running applications and websites over the internet and within the internal or enterprise network, the question of business continuity is one of how do I keep my application users connected to my application within an acceptable threshold of availability, reliability, and performance, with the knowledge and understanding that chaos is a really pervasive and unavoidable element in this system. Now, for most teams, that doesn't mean that they should dive headfirst into building out the world's most ironclad disaster recovery and business continuity plan in order to keep their applications running at all times, at all costs. And that's because I think business continuity planning, while it's a technical question, first and foremost, it's a business question. And Francesco, I think I'll turn it over to you to pick it up there.
Sure thing. Well, my take on it is I could bore you to death and talk about business continuity. And from a technical perspective, I will only say the following from a technical perspective. Business continuity really boils down to what are called service level objective, service level indicators, and service level availability or agreements towards your customers or your clients. But truly, business continuity isn't a technical topic per se. It is probably even more of a business topic. The real question, the key question every customer out there should be asking himself or herself is, what does 1 minute of downtime or even service degradation equate to monetarily? This is very true for anybody running SRE, and it's very important to understand if you're driving and leading your organization. You see, there might be businesses out there who produce 1 million revenue every minute of downtime at all times of the day. There are other businesses who only drive turnover or during weekdays, maybe office hours. And then there's even other businesses out there, think of healthcare, where a downtime can cost human lives. So what I'm trying to say here is there is no one size fits it all formula, right? And that is why the key question a business leader should be asking himself is, how much of a downtime or service degradation can he or she tolerate for his business?
Oh, thanks. Well, that leads me right to the next question, because I think this is what we're hearing all over. I mean, we're in cloud transformation all over the place. How did cloud transformation change the business tech stack? I mean, with this cloud, wasn't this the promise? Why can't we take business continuity for granted now? And last but not least, I mean, it's a long question. It's more than one question, but I'm handing it over. How did the recent global outages from Akamai, Cloudflare, and Fastly demonstrate on what's happening out there? Francesco,
I'll take it. I'll take it very gladly. So we've all followed up closely with the Akamai, Cloudflare, and Fastly recent outages. More have happened in the past with other providers, and somehow I'm simply not surprised that this has happened. You see, it's a principle of site reliability engineering that no business, no system can run 100% of the time, right? There is a notion of error or downtime budget that engineers deal with in agreement with their managers. And so they deal with downtime. Downtime simply is to be factored in. What truly surprises me instead is how come so many businesses, especially larger ones these days, haven't come to accept this notion and deal with it by determining a plan of redundancy and business continuity around these. You see, even only moving traffic back to their origin servers in these specific circumstances might have helped mitigate the issue that these three CDNs faced. And now let's look at what has changed in the last 10 years. This is worth a book of its own. Okay, let me name a few things down. First of all, the public cloud is around us. AWS led the way at the end of the zeros years. Azure followed. Today we have even more public cloud providers on top of private cloud providers. And what they promised us was elasticity, redundancy, unlimited scalability of their systems. Together with it, many other things happened. DevOps happened. Not many people talked about DevOps in 2008 or 9. Agile methodology happened. It still existed before then, but it boomed together with the birth of the public cloud industry. And so did things like infrastructure as code or API-driven operations, and even more than that. Now, how come with all these newcomers, businesses out there still fail from time to time? Well, let's just say that I mentioned the good part about what happened in the past 10 years. I didn't touch base on the bad and the ugly, if you like. Speed is the common denominator of all these new technologies and approaches and philosophies, if you like. The problem is that speed doesn't necessarily go hand in hand with availability. Let's take a few scenarios. If I'm a DevOps and several times a day I have to create, edit, and destroy environments, I cannot wait for a system administrator or a DNS administrator or a network administrator to respond the ticket I filed within 48 hours to help me do this change. I simply can't wait, simply. Or if a third-party system suddenly fails, as we were talking about right now, I have to suddenly be able to switch my traffic or my component towards a working one. If I can't do that, then you can be sitting on 17 different clouds. You will still be down until the outage is over. You see, this is with regards to all layers of your tech stack. This might affect web servers, databases, application servers, all the way down to DNS, which as a protocol kind of underlies it all. And that is why I'd like to ask Danielle, maybe you, Danielle, want to bring on the DNS layer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you said there, Francesco, is so true on so many levels. We talk about how the entire application delivery stack has really modernized, and cloud computing has enabled a lot of that rapid innovation. And I think what you spoke to there too was the fact that when we're moving at such a rapid pace of change, and we're distributing in highly complex, highly distributed environments, anything that's manual is going to kill you, right? It's going to slow you down. You can't afford that. And that's especially true when it comes to availability and keeping things online, in the face of the chaos that we've talked about. With regards to the DNS layer, it's absolutely true, right? You can't you can't fully modernize and take advantage of things like DevOps and agile methodologies unless you're really addressing that underlying critical infrastructure at the DNS layer. And this is something that our founders realized 8 years ago when they actually started NS1, is that despite the fact that DNS as a protocol is really old, it's road tested, it's as old as the internet itself, it's tried and true, but it really wasn't evolving 10 years ago at the onset where cloud computing and DevOps really became kind of came onto the scene and then now are really commonplace, it just wasn't keeping pace with what the world's most innovative internet companies needed in order to support that modernization. And so that's why we started NS1. We know that DNS infrastructure has to be as programmable, as API driven, as intelligent, and as cloud native as the rest of your stack, if your organization is going to be able to keep up with the demands of digital business, right? And I want to give you an example of what that speed looks like. We've talked a lot about how the global pandemic has really accelerated digital transformation and cloud transformation for a lot of companies. One of our largest customers, or one of our customers is Walmart, and they're one of the world's largest retailers. And at the onset of the pandemic last year, when lockdown orders were going into effect across the world in different regions, Walmart Labs had to literally overnight build out an e-commerce platform for Honduras and Costa Rica in order to enable grocery delivery services in those countries. And they were able to do that in part because they were using a programmable modern infrastructure stack that went all the way down to the DNS layer. I think you talked about earlier, Francesco, if companies have to sit and wait for some person at the other side of the company submitting a ticket and saying, can you go update these DNS records, instead of being able to just, build that into your IAC tools or whatever, that can really slow down the business overall. And I think we're seeing examples of just how critical speed is for the business and how critical it is for teams to have that infrastructure that allows them to be fast and agile without losing redundancy. So this is, I will say, for the DNS layer, what we used to think about it as like the phone book of the internet. Today, it has to be much smarter than that. It has to be much more dynamic than that. Organizations are really taking advantage of multi-endpoint types of infrastructure. Things are dynamic. Things only exist for a few minutes within an environment. And so the DNS has to be also able to steer and make dynamic decisions based on the current conditions of the network, the infrastructure, where the users are at, all of these different conditions. And that's really an important piece that I think a lot of organizations maybe overlook or maybe take for granted, that DNS is just some underlying boring plumbing, but it really is an enabler of being able to go fast in business today.
Well, great point. So DNS isn't a new product. DNS is the gateway to the internet. Without DNS, and not only to the internet, same thing in companies within. Without DNS, there's nothing. There's not even a phone book, there's no routing. So, how come that the world's largest websites and vendors still suffer from DNS outages? Francesco, please explain that to me.
Let's put it this way. I will never stress enough how overlooked port 53 as a protocol be out there. It's also how we won the trust of so many customers over the years. Let's put it this way. Most customers out there take DNS for granted or as a commodity, as Danielle mentioned. And well, they do until it stops working, because the moment it stops working and your whole business goes down, you think about it twice again. So what can a business do, good or bad, about handling its DNS layer? Look, you could look at DNS as a commodity, maybe even as a free product, and well, you will get what you pay for. You will suffer outages every now and then, and you'll have to live with it. You can otherwise be a bit more clever, see the value, the intrinsic value in it working and performant DNS worldwide for you, both external and internal, of course, and go for a robust DNS vendor, which isn't just performant, a vendor that cares about robustness of their networks. We also have to say that there are DDoS attacks out there growing in size without stopping, without needing to go all the way back to Mafia Boy in year 2000. Let's just remember what the Mirai attack in 2016 did to Dyn systems. That attack was 1.6 terabits per second. Or let's think about what happened with Google in 2017. It was an attack carrying 2.53 terabits per second. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because such a large throughput of an attack really makes it hard for any single provider or entity or endpoint to sustain it. And that's what leads us into talking about multi-DNS alongside multi-CDN, alongside multi-vendor or multi-cloud strategies. The thing is, you can put all your eggs in one basket, but if you want to be resilient, you have to ensure that you have a failover basket for the day that basket will fail. And so how can you as a business do things right? Yeah, start with finding a robust DNS vendor and then go multi if possible. That's my take on it.
Oh, great take on Danielle. So
Yeah.
what kind of fail safes, if there are any, does a single managed DNS provider give its customers?
Yes, that's a really great question. And to go back to your, just to underscore what you said earlier, Thorsten, like if your DNS is down, your application is down, right? I think we've established that. And Francesco,
I fear so.
And if I'm the person who's responsible for the DNS and I'm running that in house, boy, I that's probably not a day that I want to be at work, right? Or maybe that's the career limiting day for you. So what we see is a lot of organizations wanting to really shift that burden of risk out of the data center, off of the self-hosted DNS and into a managed DNS provider, right? And in terms of the fail safes that a managed DNS provider can give a customer or can give a business, I'll speak to our own infrastructure. We are one of the leading managed DNS providers in the market. I don't think that's any surprise or question to anyone. We operate and monitor a large Anycast global DNS network with 26 points of presence worldwide. So if one pop goes down, you've got 25 others all over the world to take that traffic. In addition to that, Francesco, you talked about the large scale DNS attacks that have become pretty commonplace. This is something we take very seriously. Any managed DNS provider has to have a defense in depth approach to how they're protecting and securing that infrastructure from large scale DDoS attacks and other type of DNS threats that we're seeing that are becoming more commonplace. Even as recently as some of the black hat research that we've seen coming out this past few weeks. In addition to that, what we have done at NS1 is we've even built our own network observability tools so that we can summarize high volume network data streams in real time for our own monitoring purposes. And what's cool about that is we've actually released these tools as open source projects to the community. So that's Packetvisor and Orb, we'll plug those. But in addition to all of the things that managed DNS service providers should do to secure and protect and ensure resilience and reliability within their own infrastructure, it's important that they're also providing tools and features that allow their customers to build resilience. Some of those include supporting DNSSEC. That should be a given, and especially in a multi-provider environment. Managed DNS providers also should have ways to enable automatic detection and failover to be able to steer traffic around outages and service degradation. We talked earlier about the need for intelligence and being able to use diverse telemetry in order to make those routing decisions. And it goes all the way down to supporting enterprise grade security controls as well. A managed DNS service provider should be providing multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, role-based access control, the very important audit logging that we often overlook, but is super critical when things go wrong. These are really table stakes that you should be looking for when you are evaluating providers for your DNS layer that in order to provide those fail safes. Now, I will say, we talked a little bit about DNS redundancy as well, and having multiple providers at the DNS layer. There's a few ways to accomplish that. There are some trade-offs, obviously. One of the ways that we get around some of those trade-offs at NS1 and what we do that's so unique is we actually enable our customers to build out a dedicated DNS network on our infrastructure. And what that looks like is a physically and logically separated network that shares the control plane or the management plane with our managed service so that customers can really easily determine or build out a redundant DNS infrastructure without having any kind of limitations or hiccups when they're trying to work across multiple DNS providers and may lose some of those advanced features and traffic steering that we've talked about. So that's one of the ways also that we're able to ensure fail-safe. So I know that was kind of a long list, but hopefully that gives folks an idea of what they should be looking for or what the expectation should be when they're looking at taking DNS from in-house into a managed provider environment.
So once the people have really looked at it and they have come to the conclusion that actually they have a zero tolerance in downtime, what can a business do to protect itself from outages? What does a business continuity package look like? You know, it's like multi-CDN, multi-DNS, multi-cloud, DDoS protection, WAF, bot, API, and I could go on for another 25 points where security is right there. I mean, multi is multi, and multi adds another layer of complexity. What can we do, Danielle? I have to put it back to you because that's your point.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, on the security front, let's put that one aside a little bit because, you know, there are what 3,000, 5,000 security vendors, so we could spend a whole webcast just talking about the security infrastructure. But you know, I want to kind of pick that up from some of the things you talked about around multi-cloud, multi-CDN, multi-DNS. So when we think about the infrastructure providers who you're using in order to deliver applications across the world to your users, what we've seen is that this idea of multi-concept or multi-cloud, multi-CDN, multi-provider, it's becoming increasingly popular. You know, it's not super simple. We try to make it simple, but you know, adding a second cloud provider or creating a redundant CDN provider is not necessarily, you know, the flip of a switch. But you know, something that you said, Francesco, earlier is a lot of organizations are realizing that they don't want to put all of their eggs in one basket, right? You know, we talked about how the unpredictable nature of outages today really calls for the need to have redundancy. And so what we're seeing is that when you move to a multi-provider approach, if something goes wrong on one, if something goes down even at a really localized level, you can switch to that other one. You know, an example of this would be if you do dig and look at who AWS or Amazon is using for its DNS services. I can guarantee it's not just Amazon Route 53, right? They're using multiple DNS providers. We also use a lot of these infrastructure providers as well to help our own infrastructure be more resilient and redundant in the way we deliver services in application. So, you know, we're seeing this become more commonplace. I think that there's a really important part to making this work, and we've touched upon it a little bit, but is really, you know, to take advantage of redundancy in the cloud at your CDN at your infrastructure provider layer. Having an independent DNS infrastructure is really key to making that work. If your DNS service is just one part of your CDN provider or your cloud provider's infrastructure and they have an outage, you're kind of stuck, right? Like you don't really have many options. But if you have an independent, intelligent DNS layer that can automatically detect those outages even at a local level and then steer to that secondary provider, you can help to increase that resilience and that continuity that you're looking for in that multi-provider setup. So I would say it's not just enough to add a second CDN provider, add a second cloud, but you really have to have that way to steer amongst them without the risk of the DNS being unavailable if there's an outage within those environments.
Yeah. Talking about steering capabilities, maybe I can throw in a few examples from our customer base. Many of our customers have embraced this many years ago already. So let's look at a few scenarios. Some of our customers, for instance, in the field of multi-DNS, leverage upon NS1's entirely segregated, dedicated DNS network on top of the managed DNS network, so that if things go south at some point with a managed DNS, then the dedicated network will sustain and keep serving users. Other customers instead are more focused on the delivery part of things. And so unlike just going multi-CDN, which many people talk about, what they also do is they provide a way for their origin servers of directly serving traffic in case of an outage, because if worst comes to the worst, you're still better off serving a slower web page or content to your end users than serving none of it at all. Another customer of ours comes and sits upon a very, very hybrid architecture consisting of public clouds, private clouds, and on-prem data centers. They use DNS for load balancing, both based on latency and in turn based on availability, so that if one fails, the other takes over seamlessly. And finally, I'd like to also talk about China very shortly. Some of our customers do leverage upon NS1's DNS for serving their Chinese end users with standards, performance standards we're used to outside China. What do I mean by that? NS1's DNS, unicast DNS in China is possibly the only engine in the world which can translate your DNS lookup towards the unicast China-based name servers or the Anycast rest of the world 23 POPs network, depending on where you come from. No other technology that I'm aware of offers this, and this allows you to fully monetize on your Chinese end users. Yeah, food for thought.
Ooh, well, how difficult is it to plan and implement a multi-strategy? So coming back to Daniel, it's easy, isn't it?
Sure. It's easy. I think if you jump on the phone with Global Dots to get started, is that right?
Yeah. It's definitely easier.
Started, yeah.
But in earnest, as we've talked about throughout this conversation today, every organization has a different level of risk tolerance or risk adversity. Every organization has a different, economic number to weigh in terms that relates to their application availability and performance. And so starting with a kind of a risk scoring exercise, starting with that evaluation is really step one to any kind of strategy when you're evaluating, adding a second provider at any layer. I do think that it is wildly advantageous for organizations who are starting this journey to work with an expert, work with someone who does this on a daily basis, who can help provide a holistic picture of all of the different considerations and criteria to include in that evaluation. Someone like Global Dots is doing this on a regular basis and helping organizations to really evaluate that need, identify the strategies, identify the architecture, help them create the solutioning, and then implement it. So on that, I'll say also, Francesca, you probably are much more well versed in this this kind of experience than I am. So I'll turn it over to you to kind of weigh in on that as well.
Well, we've tackled many integrations of this kind, and we've seen it in all colors, truly. I can relate to integrations which lasted less than a day and integrations that lasted upwards than a month. It really depends on what is it that you are integrating, first of all, and a few considerations around the security aspects, the configuration aspects. So, for instance, DNSSEC, you pointed that out. Well, if you are running DNSSEC signing zones on for your name servers and you want to go multi-DNS, well, that's definitely going to increase the complexity exponentially. Unless, of course, you have two fully segregated networks which talk to each other seamlessly and allow you to do DNSSEC as if you were running one network only. On the multi-CDN front, what can I say? It really, really boils down to what the minimum common denominators across all of your CDNs be. In general, the guideline is to keep each and every CDN as configuration as easy as possible in order to keep them in sync with each other. Similarly, it really boils down to how familiar and API driven your business be, how DevOps embracing is your business, because the more you are, the more cloud native you are, the more into infrastructure as code you are, well, the easier it will be to ultimately set this up and let it run automatically. The degree of automation also plays a key role because, of course, if you expect to be switching things back and forth manually, then sure, it's going to be easy at first glance. It's not going to be so nice when you need to steer traffic away. If you want this to be automated, you shall invest a bit more in the planning phase, but then sleep tight at night, knowing that your systems will automatically fall back and forth, right? That's my best take on it.
Okay, thanks a lot. What we'll do right now, this was the prepared talk. Now we'll take some questions from the audience in here. And let me just wait. Here we go. And I've prepared a slide, or my marketing has prepared a slide. Thanks a lot for that. First question is coming here. How can we strengthen business resilience from zero-day vulnerabilities like attacks, bots, etc.? Maybe that's something for Francesco.
Okay, good stuff. Well, to be honest, zero-day really opens to a much wider discussion that we can cover in this conversation. But let's start with looking at what zero-day and zero-day exploits or attacks are. Well, by definition, zero-day relates to the day this weakness was introduced in your systems, your code to be more precise, and how long this has run without being known to the code proprietor or system or software integrator. The basic assumption is that you, as a customer or as a vendor, cannot know about a zero-day until you do. The moment you do, it is not a zero-day vulnerability anymore. Everyone starts implementing fixes or patches to it, and in a short time, this exploit will not be available anymore. So this can happen at all layers. And we, as Global Dots, help on many different fronts against zero-day and zero-day exploits. I can think of API security. I can think of open source and proprietary code. Think of the SDLC, for instance. When it comes to DNS, what we do is we partner with providers that take it proactively towards discovering the unknown. Because it is true on the one hand that you cannot know the unknown, but on the other hand, if you help yourself with tooling and a proactive approach to discovering what's still unknown to you, this is getting a bit philosophical, to be honest, well, you will likely find out vulnerabilities before other providers will, and you will, as a consequence, let your customers be exploitable for a much shorter time frame than if you were working with a reactive modality only vendor on this front. That's my best recommendation on this front. Maybe Danielle, you want to add something on how you take zero-day exploits at NS1?
I thought that was a great explanation, and it's zero-day attacks and zero-day exploits. They are, that's like the holy grail for the cybersecurity research community, is to figure out how do we stop these things? How do we know about bugs, vulnerabilities, exposures before the bad actors do, right? There are many anomaly detection and AI tools that work against that, but I think there's still a lot to be said for the kind of community nature of cybersecurity research in helping build those defenses against zero-day exploits and getting to them faster than malicious actors. I am reminded, I'm glad this question came up because I wanted to talk about this. Just a few weeks ago at the Black Hat Cybersecurity Conference in Las Vegas, it might have been Black Hat, DEF CON, one of the two, the security research team from Wiz presented on findings of a new class of DNS vulnerabilities that they had discovered within managed DNS providers. That could enable bad actors to perform, I think, a name server hijacking through dynamic DNS. It's a really fascinating talk. I highly recommend checking that stream or that video from DEF CON. But what, in my experience, by the time it kind of made the headlines because of Black Hat, I reached out to my CISO, my security team, just to make sure that NS1, that we had, that we were on top of it. And they said, we knew about this a few months ago. We've already taken care of it. We've architected our system so that we aren't susceptible to this type of attacks. We just don't allow for duplicate name servers to be created in a few other ways. And I say that because I think this illustrates a few key points. first and foremost, as I mentioned, continual cybersecurity research and disclosure within the community is so fundamentally important to identifying vulnerabilities early and often, and really trying to minimize that opportunity for zero-day attacks to happen, right? But that's only one piece of it, right? You also need to make sure that the subjects of those vulnerabilities, the DNS providers in this case, are really proactive, not just responsive, but are really proactive in how they are addressing those types of vulnerabilities and building a robust information security management system around their production environments. Unfortunately, when we get to a place where we think of DNS as kind of not dumb, but maybe like just underlying internet plumbing and just kind of a widget in service to other big money-making services on these giant platforms, it really it can kind of call into question just how stringent managed providers are in terms of how they're architecting, how they're really looking at DNS as through the lens of the cybersecurity research. So this is something that having having members of the organization. I know at NS1 we have members participating in IETF groups. We've got folks who are heavily engaged in the community. We maintain a robust cybersecurity disclosure program and all of our compliance certifications that you would expect from a company like ours. Those are all things that you should be checking for as well when it comes to what can you do at the DNS layer, what should you expect from a DNS provider on this.
Well, thanks a lot, you two, for this for these great answers. And I think it's a very important topic. And I think we've got time for one more. And now we're turning, from security, we're turning to money. I mean, if we do this resilience and if we turn is a multi strategy necessarily much more expensive than a single vendor? And I'm not talking about how much outages costs. I'm talking about the costs just to put that up. Danielle, maybe you could start with that. I think
that's a great question. And I'm glad for this question too. At face value, sure, right? Adding a second provider might seem like you're adding cost to your overall environment, but in reality, what we find is that when organizations are introducing that second vendor or introducing that second infrastructure, it actually gives them business leverage in order to be able to negotiate the best terms and with their other providers. And so I think that that's something that we can't really discount. One of the ways that we help organizations to avoid relying on single vendors again is to really enable them to automatically steer between two vendors, not only based on performance and availability, but also based on your business policies as well. So if you wanted to, in NS1, say, send 80% of my traffic to my preferred CDN provider so that I can reach my cost commits, or maybe based on the cost of that service, as long as it's performing within my acceptable threshold, that's where I want all my traffic to go. But if that fails, then send it to the secondary provider. So there are a lot of ways that you can take into account, your performance, capacity, costs, and really balance all of those with an intelligent traffic steering tool like the one that we provided at NS1. And that is really key to getting that business leverage, I will say. If you have to manually switch over from CDN providers, you're probably not getting the leverage and the flexibility that you need to really make that worthwhile. But so yeah, at face value, yes, it might be more expensive, but there's a lot of things to consider there that go into it. Francesco?
Well, of course, my opinion is a bit biased on this, but let me offer 2 points of view on this. First of all, a multi strategy must not necessarily be more expensive than a mono strategy. Think about the example of one of our customers. They are simply adding their own origin servers to the DNS resolution. And by doing this, they can actually even mitigate costs. They do this both for availability and performance reasons. Availability on the one hand, because of course, if you're down, you can't do business. But performance as well, because apparently in their home country, their origin servers were even more performant than the CDN. So why pay that money when I can serve them out directly from my origin service? As you can see, there are situations where a multi-strategy can even save you costs. And the second perspective I'd like to offer here is we're all looking at the costs of a multi-deployment, right? No one's looking at the potential for more revenue by introducing a multi-architecture. It boils down to several, it can be an availability-driven increase of revenue. Of course, if you are available during outages, then very likely everyone will come and purchase things from you. This can also be based on performance. Danielle shortly touched base on it. We didn't really cover this, as BCP is more about being available than being the ultra performant. But even then, you can go for performance, make your audience happier, and make them shop more from your systems, your products. Finally, let's talk again about China. I mentioned before, China is particular as a geography. What we observed is that by introducing a performant DNS engine to our customers, some of our key customers, we observed an increase of traffic and audience from 1 to 15% more. Why is this relevant? It is relevant because if you do a DNS lookup and you time out, this will never get logged anywhere, unlike HTTP traffic. If you're running business in China, you probably have a ghost population of people wanting to do business with you who cannot do business with you because you simply enough don't resolve their DNS lookups quick enough. And so you're losing anywhere from 1 to 15% of your audience expected revenue. So it's a further point to evaluate a robust vendor like this, like NS1.
All right, this is fun. Danielle, thank you so much. Francesco, thank you so much. And unfortunately, we'll run out of time. I think we'll do something like that again, because we haven't touched a lot of points which are important, like performance. We haven't touched on the last point you put in, Francesco, that, you know, better performance, more money, no outage, more money. So thank you again. What I'm going to do to the audience, if you need to answer any kind of questions, please feel free to reach out to Francesco, reach out to me as well. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can, you know, if you're, you've seen us now long enough, noticed our name, so look us up and we're responsive. So thank you so much. Thank you, audience, and have a great week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.